it's me, Pastor Connie. You're back again for another discussion video. That's just great. I'm glad to see you here once more with me. Let's get started with this discussion. This week, we're going to continue our look into the life of Simon Bar-Jonah, or Peter, or Cephas, the rock on which Jesus built his church. So far in our studies, we know that Simon Bar-Jonah, who we know as Simon Peter, was the first disciple listed as being called by Jesus into discipleship. We'll rely on the Gospels and the book of Acts, but we'll also have to research different historic and apocryphal texts so that we can piece together his journey after Pentecost. But hey, we've done it all along. We can still do it for this final disciple. The life and journeys of Simon Peter play a major portion in the establishment of the early Christian church. In part 1, we focused on Simon Peter's life as a disciple of Jesus. In part 2, we delved into Simon Peter's life as a powerful church leader and also looked at his journeys as an apostle. In this final discussion, we will take a closer look at his time in Rome and his subsequent death. With that said, let's begin as we get into the final portion of Simon Peter's life, the rock on which Jesus' early church was built. Now, some believe that Peter headed to Rome for a second time around AD 62 to AD 64. This would have occurred during Emperor Nero's reign, which took place from AD 54 to AD 68. Now, others believe that Peter may have used Rome as his home base after arriving during his third journey, and that would put it around AD 43 or AD 44, during the second year of the reign of Emperor Claudius. This is due to common tradition because there's evidence that Peter was the first bishop and later pope of the early Christian church in Rome. And he was this until the 14th year of Nero's reign, around AD 68. Still others believe that Peter never visited Rome and credit Paul with the establishment of the Roman church community. You can read more about this on your own and draw your own conclusions. Now, the story goes that Emperor Nero, who reigned from AD 54 to AD 68, was no fan of Peter's. His hostile attitude was due primarily to two reasons. First, Nero was enraged at Peter because two of his concubines were converted to Christianity and no longer agreed to sleep with him. And second, Nero was angry at Peter because he felt he caused the death of his god, Simon Magnus, the magician. Now remember that story I told you about in part 2, and I told you to go look it up yourselves? Well, I figured that I'm just going to go ahead and spill the tea right now and tell you what happened. Here we go. You see, Nero believed that since Simon Magnus was a magician, he was also a god, and he couldn't die. Oops, wrong. Remember Peter's stop in Rome during his third journey around AD 43 and AD 44? Well, it is believed that Peter encountered Simon Magnus, the magician, again during this visit. Surely you didn't forget about this magician. He was in Antioch, remember? He was the guy who tried to buy Peter's ability to give the Holy Spirit by the laying on of hands. And what did Peter tell him? Your money's no good. You can't buy a gift from God like this. Well, by now, Simon Magnus was a favorite magician of Nero, and he doesn't want Peter on his turf. So he challenged Peter to a contest, each pitting their magical powers against each other. Simon Magnus thrills the assembled crowd with his powers of levitation and other magic. Now, there are several different versions of this event. However, the basic story goes like this. From the apocryphal text, the Acts of Peter, it is recounted that Peter prays to Jesus, God, to make Simon Magnus stop his levitating. And when God stops Simon Magnus in midair, he falls to the ground, breaking his leg in 3 places. So the crowd accepts that Peter is the more powerful of the 2 men. And with that, they turn on Simon Magnus and stone him. He is carried off to the town of Terracina, and he eventually dies. So now you understand why Emperor Nero was a little bit more than angry at Peter. Anyway, in AD 64, a massive fire occurred in Rome, which was believed to have been started by the Emperor Nero. Remember the old saying, Nero fiddles while Rome burns? Well, that's where it came from. Anyway, Nero places the blame on the local Christians, which gives him a reason to brutally persecute them during this time. Legend has it that Peter's followers grew increasingly concerned about his safety in Rome between the years AD 64 and AD 68. They beg him to leave the city because they fear for his life. Peter decides to go, but as he is leaving, he has a powerful vision at the gates of Rome. It is said that Peter is amazed to see Jesus entering the city, and Peter asks, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus tells him that he is going into Rome to be crucified in Peter's place. It is at that pivotal moment Peter understands that he must be the one who is crucified in Rome and not Jesus. So he returns to his Roman followers. Soon he is arrested and put into jail. But even here, Peter converts his Roman guards to Christianity, and eventually he is scheduled to be crucified. Now on that fateful day, Peter asks that his cross be erected upside down because he is not worthy to be crucified in the same manner as Jesus. He explains that Jesus was descended from heaven to earth, so he was crucified with his head toward heaven and his feet toward earth. Yet he, Peter, wants his feet pointing toward heaven and his head earthward, because he will be traveling from earth to heaven. After he dies on the cross, his body is taken to a nearby little public cemetery and buried. That cemetery still exists today under the Vatican Basilica, based on the information found from modern-day excavations. Here are a few pictures of St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican in Rome. Well, there you have it. The final chapter in Simon Peter's life and the final disciple in our discussion series. Our next discussion will start with us exploring the epistles and letters written by these apostles. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Have a great and blessed day.